Problems occur due to how we define X rather than what X is. And to that end, one of the recent things that has been happening in the world that I think is in general a positive idea is fact checking. Now, the way certain people are fact checked and what is fact checked and who controls and organizes what the facts are is something that's also becoming increasingly important as the time goes on. And this video is me reading a speech from Joe Biden, President of the United States of America, and following up on some fact checks of that.
To get a bit more context, put me in my bearings in this, because when they're transcribing this, Joe Biden has a manner of speaking. This might be due to age, this might be due to other issues, might be due to his supposed stutter. And I'm just thinking about looking back when people were saying, oh, look how Trump speaks. He doesn't necessarily make sense. We're concerned about his mental state. And I'm imagining the people who believed those people were doing it out of a good place, who were truly cared about the presidency and were like, okay, we're worried about this. So if somebody's acting this way, it means the presidency has issues. I'm wondering where those people are now, and more specifically, the people who thought those people cared, who are seeing those people being quiet now. Are they thinking like, what's going on? But people don't really care about those things. Most people who were saying it were just finding a reason to be against Trump. Most people are saying it now about Biden. Tried to excuse it when it was happening with Trump. Some things happen where I think people are taking these things out of context. A good example, I'm going to paraphrase what Joe Biden said about Xi Jinping in a previous town hall, where he was talking about how I told Chairman Xi that he has to understand that as a politician, my constituents are going to request me to say certain things. And things are relative and things like that. And the people are like, oh, he's making an excuse for communism. He's just saying like the Chinese are communist and it's okay because they're Chinese and they can do all these things. So the people are like, oh, the Uyghur genocide. He doesn't want to like detract them. And he's saying like he doesn't really believe that. Do I really believe Joe Biden is pro-genocide? No. Do I really believe he really cares about going out there as a statesman and calling Xi Jinping out for some global case of freedom of humanity? No, he doesn't believe that either. He's a politician, business by politics as usual, and he was clearly just indicating that yes, if you are a politician, to be in charge of whatever government you're a minority in general in the population. So there has to be some kind of tacit approval from the general population. So the Chinese people are going to request or subconsciously or not even directly demand a certain level of leadership where Xi Jinping is going to have to say certain things to maintain his position. Just like in United States of America, Joe Biden will have to mention he can't just, if he's ever in a position where he has to address the Uyghur situation, he won't be able to just pass it on. He'll have to actually say it's a negative thing, whether or not he truly believes that. And more specifically, whether or not him saying something that may be distasteful to the Chinese regime, to the Chinese the Communist Party of China, and all those officials, even if they consider something he said negative, he's just telling them, look, I have to say certain things. This is how I read it. I have to say certain things. But importantly, the policy might not actually follow what I have to say. Because they would rather he just say things. I know it's a different culture where they have the saving face and things like that. But I digress. So in that situation, you said I could see it. I was like, okay, you're taking that out of context. He didn't necessarily mean that. Even if he was, apparently, as people are saying, losing his mind due to dementia or due to old people issues, whatever you get to that point and like, okay, you're protesting too much. He's done enough things for you to object to without taking his words out of context. That's a similar thing that people were doing when it was happening under Trump, and I was thinking it was ridiculous to do it back then as well. So let's not do it here. And anyway, so just going here. So this thing, and they have to try and transcribe this with his disjointed way of speaking. And I guess with the transcribing thing is rather straightforward. You just write down all the words that were actually said, and you try to put the little pauses in here and things like this. So as it was coming up, he was talking about something to do with the FDA. And okay, so there's a question here. How soon is soon? Soon, I believe. The president says, soon, I believe. Now look, one of these things I committed to do when I was elected, I said. Then Mr. Lemon says, how soon? And it's talking about children under 12 being vaccinated. I'm doing the same thing, jumping around with things. Let's get to the reading. Well, let me finish the question. The answer. Soon, in the sense that I do not tell any scientists what they should do. I do not interfere. applause. Okay. Um, I don't want to give commentary, right? Let me just give the reading. And so they're doing the examinations now, the testing and making the decision now. When they are ready, when they're done, all the scientific need to be done to determine children ages 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 8, they in fact all have different makeups. They're developing. They're trying to figure out whether or not there's a vaccination that would affect one child that's at such an age and not another child. That's underway. Just like the other question, there's a logical, and I've heard you speak about it because you always, I'm not being solicitous, but you're always straight up about what you're doing. And question is whether or not okay, I said it was good to do commentary, but this is my channel. I'm just do whatever I want. But in a situation I've mentioned before, and I do think the current administration and the related parties, administration and company, which goes on to the mainstream media, most of the mainstream media, which is like the audio visual department of the Democratic Party of the United States of America, and there is something where there is some inadvertent transparency where you can see what they're doing. Don't listen to what they say. Just like the same thing with Xi Jinping, with Biden telling Xi Jinping. He says, in order to be in this position, I'm going to need to say certain things. He understands, Xi Jinping understands in different countries, different people are going to demand different things from their leadership, from political leadership. And that's the same thing. Joe Biden will say certain things, but forget the things that they're saying. Forget CNN saying we're clear and balanced. Like, just look at what they actually do. Look at how they actually cover things. Forget people saying, "Oh, we're fact checking. We're doing this because democracy dies in the darkness." Those kind of related things. Look at them saying, "Okay, we say we're fact checkers, but we're going to say that we're going to stop fact checking. We're going to reduce the fact checking on the Biden administration because X, Y, Z." So the actual actions, besides saying you're for the truth and for the facts, look at the actual actions. Look at the questions asked. Look at the behavior done. So look at the takes they take on certain things. Look at how they don't come back and circle back on certain things that they were completely wrong on. Those are the kind of actions that you need to see despite them saying they were one way. So I think that's one thing. And this one, I do agree. I do think CNN is rather straight up about what they're doing. Now, they might not be saying it straight up, but the actions-wise, I think it's undeniable at this point that these people have a certain bias, they have a certain agenda. Most people have an agenda, most people have biases, but most people will actually say and announce and be open about it and not deny that. I think that's a primary difference. Excuse that little digression. I'll try to keep it going. This is getting much longer than I thought it was going to be. But once we get into the part where we go to the fact checks, it's going to be pretty fast. Okay. So just like the other question, okay, you're talking about that. I'm jumping back again. Okay, so you're talking about, you're straight up about what you're doing. And the question is whether or not we should be in a position where you are, why can't the experts say, we know that the virus is in fact going to be, or excuse me, we know why all the drugs approved are not temporarily approved, but permanently approved. That's underway too. I expect that to occur quickly. And then Mr. Lemon adds, well, that means, you mean the FDA, and that's the Food and Drug Administration in the United States of America, for those people who are not familiar with that, and that's the governmental institution that normally deals with foods and drugs, or finding which are the things that are that are safe to take, and giving certain regulations on the preparation of certain foods and how old an animal has to be, how it's shipped, where it's sold, those kind of things. Certain medicines have to go through certain different levels of testing in order for it to be actually approved to be used inside the United States of America. There's been cases around people wanting to have certain experimental drugs when they're in certain situations. That's an issue that normally comes into the FDA. If somebody has like, oh, this drug is being administered in Canada, can I somehow have it shipped in because I have this really one particular kind of disease that maybe 5 people in the world have, and this is an experimental thing, it's going on trials, can I be in those trials? And can my insurance, which is FDA approved sort of insurance, or if I'm getting Medicaid or something like that, which is the government insurance plan for health, can that be qualified for that, even though this is something that's not really in there? So those are the kind of dispensations that they can make in certain situations, from just going to just the basic things like, oh, how is my milk that I'm being served at a public school package, like from what farm does it come from? Those are the kind of things that the FDA deals with. So it's an interesting organization. I think they could be, and they already are, competing private organizations that are not government involved. And I think those would be preferential than the FDA. But the FDA is something that is in the United States of America and present there. But yeah, so he adds that, and yeah, for the FDA, Mr. Lemon says, yeah. So what do you? And then the president says, the Federal Drug Administration. Yes, we got that. Wait, what? So, once again, with Joe Biden, another aside that I was thinking, with Joe Biden, the memes are going to be worse, and they have been worse. But it's not even about the memes. It's just literally just put the things he actually says. If you just cover him and his administration, that's enough. You don't even need to meme him up. Just listen to what they're saying. You are looking at the room. Like I said, it's a transparency. You don't need to twist it. It's just look at him, listen to him, read him. Because just now I was reading that and it got to the point where he said, what? You see, he says right here, Don Lemon reminds him, and he means the FDA. Then he says, for the FDA. Then he's saying, yeah, so what do you, and he's continuing. And then the president comes in and says, the Federal Drug Administration. And I was thinking, wait, I've been aware of the FDA since I was in middle school in the United, maybe not in middle school, shortly after when I started hearing about the food pyramid in the United States of America, because that was being advertised. And then I think I might have read the FDA way back then, but I didn't really understand what the FDA was probably until high school, when we were taking like health education classes, which was home economics and things like that, where you could cook and you could learn how to do different things around the household. That was still a class in my school when I was in school. It was pretty good high school, and but I'm also kind of old. but it's not really too big in many schools now. But the Federal Drug Administration, I was like, wait, am I the one who's messed up? Like, am I the one who's messing up this thing? Federal Drug Administration. So I checked. No, FDA is the Food and Drug Administration. It's not the Federal Drug Administration. I don't know if there is a Federal Drug Administration. Let's check. Federal Drug Administration. Yeah, there is a Federal Drug Administration. Maybe he's talking about that instead. No, so again, Federal Drug Administration. Just checked. FDA? No, 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 no. Now, in this one, I am almost certain that if Donald Trump had been in some sort of, and this is the thing with Biden, there's many other things that are being talked about in this, but Don Lemon reminds him that he means the FDA. He says, yes, for the FDA. And then he comes in and clarifies the Federal Drug Administration. If it was a situation where, Donald Trump doesn't even know what the FDA means. He's supposed to be the president of the United States of America and doesn't know what the main FDA thinks. This is a situation where people are dying from this thing and he doesn't know what the main organization in charge of. No, it's not the Federal Drug Administration. Joe Biden, Mr. Joe Biden, Joe Robinette Biden. It's not. This is not a stutter. That is not a stutter. The Federal Drug Administration was probably not even on a teleprompter. If you think he was reading, I don't think he's reading from a teleprompter. In this kind of situation, do they read from teleprompters in town halls? I'm not sure. But it's not the Federal Drug Administration. He's making me sound like, I was like, am I the crazy one? No. Anyway, back to the reading. We'll almost get to the point, and then, as I mentioned, the fact checks will be rather fast. Okay. So, Mr. Lemon, again, no correction. Does it say, what do you mean the Federal Drug Administration? What is that? No, just skip that. And it's not circle back to what you said there. Okay, Mr. Lemon, you said you'll be talking to scientists but what are they telling you, Mr. President? The President. What they're telling me is, let us decide based on scientific data in how we proceed. Do it the way we ordinarily do it. Look, for example, everybody talks about how, this virus came, the drugs that are designed to kill the virus came along so quickly. They've been working on it for 2 decades. There's nothing quick about this. It's been over 2 decades. So people, now here he's talking about, I think here he's referring to the fact that it's in a family of diseases. This is not, the COVID was a was a new form of a known family or known category of diseases. So it's something that in some of these cases when it's a new form of something, not even the whole variant right now that's going on in the supposed Delta variant compared to the other ones, where they're saying this is a new strain of something that we already know, so we might be able to attack it and deal with it in these other kind of therapies. This is not necessarily specifically talking about what research has been being done in different labs all over the world. But that research in different labs all over the world was not specifically on this particular virus, at least for what we know of right now, but in viruses in this family and also other viruses in this kind of family, other species of this sort of virus. Kind of just the same thing how it's like, okay, you have dogs, you like dogs? You have dogs, and you can have like a Chihuahua, you can have like a Saint Bernard, you can have a Doberman Pinscher. Now, there's certain things we know about certain dogs and their behavior, and they're like, okay, dogs kind of like walking around. Dogs kind of do this. Oh, this is a small dog. That small toy dog is probably going to behave the same as a Shih Tzu, even though I've never actually seen a Doberman Pinscher before. There might be some things in it. Oh, it kind of looks like a Doberman Pinscher. Maybe the Doberman itself has some things familiar with it. So you can have some kind of temperamental type of things or some kind of behavioral things off of those things. But still, if some random new dog just walked out of the woods, you could try to identify it to similar dogs in its breed, in its general in the whole idea of dogs, but there might be specific things about this specific breed of dogs that will need to be researched and found. And with some new kind of virus coming out like COVID, it's kind of hard to actually do that fast. So without Operation Warp Speed, which supposedly created a successful different sorry I have a stutter. No, successful versions of different kinds of vaccines which have slightly altered definitions of what vaccines were before. That's something that's come in as AstraZeneca. There's all those other ones. If you think Sinovac is something that works, that's one of the ones coming out of China. So there's been a rush to kind of develop these ones for this, something that is rather this novel COVID virus kind of coming out. So that's, I think, what he means here with the 2 decades. This is not some kind of tell, like, oh, he knows it. But no, I don't think that's a tell for that. I don't think this means that he knows anything. I don't know if he knows or he doesn't know. I definitely think there's a lot of things that he knows that he wouldn't tell us, and there's a lot of things you know that you wouldn't tell me, and there's a lot of things I know that I wouldn't tell you. Okay, so people, I'm talking a drug that was approved so quickly. It's been 2 decades. The truth is, we haven't said it enough to people to allay their feels. I think he was talking about feelings, their fears. I guess he made a mistake with the R there. There's nothing. The fears. This is nothing that just happened yesterday, and they said we'll take a shot on this, and there's a process. Usually, the process takes the better part of a year or more to get some of these things decided. And you see, that's what I was talking about. He's talking about the warp speed type of thing, how it comes out, and that could bring up some questions, and that seems to make sense to me. It seems to make sense. That's where some people have some questions in what was going on, and I think that seems rather even-handed to point this out. And yeah, and Joe Biden himself his vice president herself. Again, these are political statements. Joe Biden said there was no. He is on record saying there was no actual vaccine before he was inaugurated. There was. Kamala Harris said, oh, I'm not going to take it if Donald Trump tells me to take it. I need to wait for certain experts to tell me first before I take it. Now, that's a political statement she was making. I think that was more towards her constituents. In that situation, and again, she qualified it with particular experts. And this is, I think, a similar statement that Joe Biden is saying here, where he's saying, look, some people have questions. Yes, it comes out. You can't just say, oh, take this. I'm going to take a shot. They're also waiting. People are also waiting for a certain level of experts to tell them that, yes, this is something that is okay. So whoever they consider to be an expert on something, this whole idea of expertise is not, in some fields, it's not objective. Like if you have something like basketball, you can look at LeBron James, like him or not, and look at his actual statistics and achievements, and you can say, yes, he's an expert basketball player. You don't have to actually know him. When it comes to scientific field, there are certain things where you can say, okay, this person is an expert on this person is an expert on that, due to the actual achievements. But when you come on something like in this situation where it's an experimental, where it's emergency use, where there are dispensations being made, they're already admitting that in the system that we normally have, that we tell you it's been through the expert kind of systems, and then we say it's been approved 100%, that's a system that's normally supposed to engender the trust in the people that, yes, it's been through the appropriate experts. But when that same system says it's only emergency use and we're not fully giving full approval yet, that's something where people are like, wait, you tell us it only gets full approval after it's been through the experts and it's been found to be safe, but this hasn't achieved it. So what's the situation? And it could just be a simple thing that to do that, you do need a longer time. So there technically is some sort of experiment going on in this situation. That's a simple thing that I think is incontrovertible. I don't know. What do you think? Okay, so back to the reading. But the expectation, they're not promising me any specific date. But my expectation, talking to the group of scientists we put together, over 20 of them, plus others in the field, is that sometime, maybe in the beginning of the school year, at the end of August, beginning of September, October, they'll have a final approval saying the FDA said, no, this is it. It's good. Yeah, that's the Food and Drug Administration right there. And he's saying the beginning here, some people might be like, oh, what is he meaning at the beginning, end of August, beginning of September? Why is he going 3 months? In the United States of America, he's talking about kids in high school and middle school and things like that. In the United States of America, it's divided into 3 quarters, so that would be in the first quarter, so that would still be considered the start of it, so you don't have to, that's why it's 3 months like that. I think anything in first quarter would be considered, I think, the start to me in an accurate manner. Okay, so then he goes to, but again, one last thing. We don't talk enough about this. I don't think, one last thing that's really important is, we're not in a position where we think that any virus, including the Delta virus, now, I think the Delta virus, when he says it this way, it's a variant, supposedly it's a variant, and I don't know the testing they actually do to actually tell the difference between the Delta variant and the other one. It's supposed to be a Lambda variant out there. But let me just go back to the start and let me read this because this is the pertinent paragraph that we're talking about that I want to refer to in this increasingly longer post. Bear with me. Okay, but again, one last thing. We don't talk enough to you about this. I don't think one last thing that's really important is, we're not in a position where we think that any virus, including the Delta virus, which is much more transmissible and more deadly in terms of non-vaccinated people, the various shots that people are now getting now cover that. You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations. So that's the key statement. You are not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations. That's something being repeated. As I mentioned, I'm not sure how they tell the difference. I'm not sure how they're telling the difference with the actual more deadly in terms of unvaccinated people. And this is something where I'm already questioning in this situation. In the past, before there was a vaccine, there was no vaccinated people to compare those statistics with. So what statistics are they using to say, in the past, this was it? Are they saying it with maybe the initial times when the vaccine was coming out? Is that what they're using? Saying like, okay, before the Delta variant was found, let's say the Delta variant was found, let's say it was found about 3 months ago. I'm not quite sure the date. And people have been being vaccinated before. Are they saying before the Delta was found that people who weren't vaccinated were not, he's saying more deadly. So was he stating that in the past, when the vaccine was being given, before the Delta was found, there was people dying from the pre-Delta variant of COVID at a higher rate, at a lower rate than the people dying today are from confirmed Delta virus? I don't know. I don't know what those statistics are. Maybe they've released them somewhere else here with COVID-19. It might actually be in there, the statistics and things like that. Not quite sure. But the key part here, you're not going to get COVID if you've had these vaccinations. That is a key statement. That is disinformation. Definitively. Because even it's the statistics of people who've had it. Recently there was a big hubbub about some state administrators leaving, legislators leaving Texas and going to the Capitol say, oh, we don't want to vote on this voting bill, so we're going to leave and abscond, and they won't be able to actually have a quorum, and a quorum is enough people to have a certain law passed in the Texas state legislature, and they were pictured on their bus going away, and on the private chartered plane, and they've been traveling around D.C. Meeting with the politicians, taking selfies and social media, and just being darlings, media darlings in general. And then I think it's a couple of dozens of them. It's about 60 people I think had traveled. It might have been more than that. I don't know how the entire size of the delegation is, but I know 6 of them have come down with the actual virus. Now, if you're infected, does not necessarily mean you are being hospitalized. There's differences with that. Some people could be infected, and I think that's a primary thing that the people who are with the pro-vaccine people, the companies themselves who are producing are saying, look, this is going to reduce the chance of you dying. This is going to reduce the chance of you being hospitalized. It's not necessarily going to negate you actually getting infected. Now, I think that is why I'm saying the definition of vaccine in this case is relatively different than what I think has been expected. And there was a short video I recorded and never actually posted it when back in the World Health Organization, this was about 4 months ago, when they started altering the definition of what a vaccine was. And that's suspicious to me. And it's suspect. They altered the definition of that. The definition of gain of function research is seeming to be altered. And the definition of what a stutter is seeming to be altered. But I think most companies have actually said it. And to that end, there's this. This is what led me to actually do this, because I was just thinking, okay, what's the actual fact checks on this? So fact check, this is from Newsweek. Did Joe Biden spread misinformation on COVID vaccines? So they're talking specifically about this. So this is a CNN on July 21st. The town hall presenter, he says, okay, the president said that there's a pandemic for those who are not vaccinated against COVID. He went on to claim, if you're vaccinated, you're not going to be hospitalized. You're not going to be in an ICU unit, and you're not going to die. Okay. Biden also said, you're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations. Currently, 3 COVID vaccines are available in the US by Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson. CNN broadcast the town hall and the president's claims widely, including online and cable and satellite. So it's rare for people fully vaccinated to fall ill, as I mentioned. The U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, a federal agency, states that in the website, vaccine breakthrough cases are expected. COVID-19 vaccines are effective and are a critical tool to bring the pandemic under control. However, no vaccines are 100% effective at preventing illness in vaccinated people. There will be a small percentage of fully vaccinated people who will get sick, are hospitalized, or die from COVID-19. It goes on to state, like with other vaccines, vaccine breakthrough cases will occur. So the CDC data shows that 159 million people have been vaccinated against COVID. Then out of the 5,189 breakthrough cases reported by the CDC, where the person was hospitalized or died, 1,456 are asymptomatic or not related to COVID, and out of the 1,063 fatal vaccine breakthrough cases. So the CDC webpage on the breakthrough cases did not state whether the hospitalized individuals were treated in ICU separately. So these could have been things from massive other comorbidities. It could have been just the last thing that pushed them over, as was happening with the initial start. And most of the whole situation, where you look at people who are under 75, under even, I think it was under 65, I want to say roughly on that area. They have, even above, most people who've died from have had other comorbidities. But the people who are younger than 65, younger than 50, seemingly, if you don't have some major other issue, including obesity, which is a major issue, it's a major health risk, especially when it's something to do with the lungs and the kind of stress that having all that adipose tissue and that weight and the gravity has on your cardiovascular system when you're obese, that has been one of the primary ones that has killed younger people. So we need to have less fat acceptance and more fit awareness. I think that could be a positive thing to do. Just in relation to that, I'm recovering from obesity. It's probably going to be a lifelong thing. At least I still have a couple of years to go before I'm in a situation where I'm like, okay, sometimes I'll fluctuate a bit up, and then I can feel the gravity pulling down on me. It's not a good place to be at. Trying to improve my life in that way just reduces certain dangers that people have. So that's agreed. I get that. And I do understand that they're going to be breakthrough cases. That happens with all vaccines, even previous ones to these ones. But what's the ruling here? It says Joe Biden spread misinformation about COVID vaccines at CNN Town Hall. So true. So here they say true. So fact check false is normally, in my estimation, it's like, oh, Trump said this about Mexicans. Then they say, Trump said Mexicans are for example, Trump said Mexicans are assaulting, are all criminals. They're all bad people. He said some of them bad people. Like what he said. You were some of the stats. You're talking about the coyotes coming across the border. 80% of the females who come across that horrific kind of transit are assaulted by these people. And he says that. Then he says, oh, and some of them are good people, but they're not sending the best. They're not sending you. But they focus on that. They say Trump called all Mexicans criminals, and they say false. That's a typical type of thing where they say that they'll focus on that statement in that way. But here, as you see, they said, did Joe Biden spread misinformation about COVID vaccines? Now, I guess if you just go down, you can say, okay, true, he did. Yeah, okay. So why didn't they just say the statement where he says, instead of focusing on that, focus specifically on the statement, you are not going to get COVID if you get these vaccinations. If that's fact check, Joe Biden said you're not going to get COVID if you get these vaccinations. And then you scroll down and it's false. Because people are going to come and see this. Some people might come and see this and then think, okay, I'm coming to see what Joe Biden said about vaccines. Was he saying the truth or was he not? And then you come and say, okay, what he said was false. So in this situation, it still comes into a situation where the statement isn't necessarily about Joe Biden. In this fact check, it's about what somebody is saying about Joe Biden. This is not a fact check on what Biden said. This is a fact check on what people said about what Biden said. See, so it seems to be a bit off. So you see, remarks by President Joe Biden in town. Okay, so that's it. Fact check. Did Joe Biden spread misinformation? So I guess you click that. This is the thing. Maybe I'm taking this too far, and it's just people would understand that they're saying this is not a fact check on Biden. This is a fact check on. So people said that, and they might be people who don't misconstrue that what Biden actually said was true, because they see this and they think, okay, people saying Biden was false is true. But yeah, anyway, so I think it's misinformation. What does PolitiFact say? You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations. Half true. How's it half true? So this is, I guess, the kind of Cliff Notes type of thing. So again, this is showing that, yes, most of the people don't get it. But this was an argument people were saying. If it's 99.5% survivability, most of the people who actually get infected, are found to be infected, don't die. So if that's something worth saying, why is that an issue? And yes, this is infinitesimal. This is an infinitesimal amount. But how many people in that age cohort who are relatively healthy have actually been found to die? Of those millions of kids who are below that age, who are healthy, how many of them have actually died from having COVID? So that's some of the questions people are saying, why do they have to have it? How many people, out of the millions of people who've had it and recovered from it, have actually got it again and died from it? Those are the people who are saying, why do we need to take the vaccine? If it's essentially a thing where it's like half true, where it's like, yeah, you're not going to get COVID if you've actually had it. Is that a thing that people are saying? So it's rare for people who are fully vaccinated to contract COVID-19, but it does happen. If it's rare for you to be fully vaccinated and contract it, then what's the issue if other people aren't vaccinated and have it? If you are personally at risk, then you take the vaccine. Aren't you protected from those other people? Essentially, it's like 99.95. So these are some of the questions. I don't really understand what's going on. So the data shows that among vaccinated people, approximately 0.0033% were hospitalized and 0.00067 died, said Cindy Prinz, an epidemiologist at the University of Florida. So those are extremely rare events. Okay, so if it's extremely rare, if one person was vaccinated with that same thing, and this was the chance, walking around a population that had no vaccinations, they would still, it would be, I guess it might be a little higher since they'd be exposed to more of it in that sense. But in general, if you are in a situation where you are this protected from it, I don't understand the big outrage of demanding everybody else get it because you have decided to get it. Again, stutter. It's just a stutter. Okay, here I searched for Biden on Snopes, which is one of the more famous or well-used fact-check sites. Nothing on that particular thing. Killing people remark, this is another thing, another issue where I think his remark is taken out of context in just the phrasing that he says. He was called out. I don't think he really meant Facebook was killing people. And then Facebook responded because legalities and perception-wise, it could have been misconstrued in a certain way. And the specific people, I think he dropped a term where he was asked about it, and he was like, yes, Facebook. Because he's just thinking Facebook, okay, the platform. Then he's like, oh, they're killing people. He doesn't necessarily mean Facebook itself, but he's like, oh, people on Facebook. I think he just didn't add the whole aspect where he's saying, oh, I've been told that there's a certain group of people who are posting things on Facebook. It's that whole situation that people say, oh, Twitter is a mess, or Twitter is a cesspit. When people say Twitter is a cesspit, of it's not a good place for arguments, they're not meaning like, oh, if you go to the Twitter company and you sit there with Jack Dorsey and all the actual other people, it's a cesspit. It's not a place where you can have conversations with people. No, they're talking about the platform like it's an actual being itself, that it has certain features and certain behavioral patterns and things like that. So I think that's how it was taken, but then words can be misconstrued, and if you are in a position of power like he is, your words actually do have certain effect, and he should have been more clear with it, and he did go back and get that, because you can get sued. You can get sued for millions of dollars to actually say something like that. Okay, AP fact check. Biden goes too far in assurances on vaccines. So I hadn't read this before. I just got it up for this video to kind of see it. So let's see what he says, if there's any actual... So editors note, look at the veracity of claims by political figures. So Biden says the risk package, the facts, his claim is misleading. So here, misleading is also misinformation. I think there's a difference with misinformation and disinformation. I think disinformation is if you know the truth. Like if I knew at the start of this video that this video is going to be this length, and I was like, okay, if you just watch this, it's going to be 5 minutes. First of all, it's not, you can tell because whenever I post it, you can see the timestamp. But if I say like, oh, I'm going to tell you the secret of why Snopes is doing this at the start, and I know that there is no thing that I actually know the secret of, and I keep telling you, and I keep telling you, and then at the end I'm like, and that's the secret, and I never actually gave you that information of any actual knowledge that I was confident in, and then you leave thinking, wait, did you actually tell me anything, or that wasn't the evidence, like what you said you were going to tell me, you didn't provide evidence for that, it's not true. And I knew the whole time that I had no evidence. I was just trying to throw enough data at you to make you kind of forget or think that you actually got the answer to believe what I actually said. That's a situation where that's disinformation, because I'm intentionally trying to disinform you. Now, misinformation is if I was, for example, sitting in some restaurant somewhere, and I heard someone who I thought were the two people who were running Snopes or something, and they were talking about, yes, we're doing this because you know, we like Joe Biden, and he told us, and this is something we're going to do. And then they're just reading a script for some kind of film, and it's not really truly what they mean. And I overhear that. I'm like, I got them. And then I come out and I spread it, and I say, oh, I was sitting there, and these Snopes people were saying they're doing this for Biden, but it turns out they were just doing a script, like, or they were just reading something. They were just reading an article that was mocking what they supposedly do, and they're truly just trying to do their best. That would be a situation where I'm spreading misinformation, because I was personally misinformed. I thought it was true, but I'm telling you that is not true. So I think there's a big difference between disinformation and misinformation. I think most politicians in general, especially high-level ones, are engaged in disinformation. Now, I think they're not anywhere close to as bad as something like the Communist Party of China. They're almost 100% disinformation. I think CNN is involved in a lot of disinformation. I think the average person in general is well-meaning, and they become misinformed by reading disinformation. Like, I think the average Chinese citizen is misinformed in what life is like in the West. I was misinformed in what life was like in the United States of America due to watching TV shows and movies, because when I moved, it was back in the 90s, and at that time, TV shows you weren't getting live streaming, like it's instant premieres as you have right now in the current information age. So I was getting movies from like 8 years back. I was thinking sometimes I would see KKK crosses, I'd see those wooden paneling cars, and I thought it would get to the United States of America and it would be like that. One thing I kind of joke about is at that time it was between the United States of America and Zimbabwe. My parents were diplomats and they were being sent to either one of those places. And I was thinking Zimbabwe because me and my brother had actually searched online, and the price of a PlayStation 1 was cheaper. And at this time we didn't understand financial economics that well, I think, with the exchange rates and everything, but somehow found out like the price of a PlayStation was cheaper it was PlayStation or Super Nintendo. I think it was still Super Nintendo back then. It might even just be Nintendo. I don't know. It was back in like 94. I'm forgetting what it was, but it was some kind of gaming system. Like, okay, it's cheaper in Zimbabwe than it is in the United States of America, so we'd rather go to Zimbabwe. That was our level of actual reasoning at that time. But we were in like we were pre-teens at that time. So that happens, and then Jesus. So I'm glad we went to the United States of America because it's definitely not as racist. The wooden paneling cars are still there, but haven't yet to see a burning cross in the yard, despite how racist some people seem to think that the country is. But anyway, so that happens. So I think there's a lot of misinformation, and I don't think when you're doing a movie like that, where you're admitting this is fake, this is a different world we're telling, it's a story that we're telling, I don't think there's disinformation there. Now, if somebody is doing a product where they're like, this is an artificial product, we're doing something that is not necessarily real, but we're saying this to you in order to get something other achieved, and you know that going in, and then somebody else comes in and believes it's real, that is up to them. You can be misinformed with no intention of disinformation from the people spreading that information. So it's up to you personally to actually go out there and look. And I think that Edge's note here is I look at the veracity of the claims by political figures. This is the thing. You need to look at the claims, veracity of claims, especially by political figures, because politics, you might not care about politics if politics cares about you. You might not care about politicians, but they care about you. They might not care about you in the sense where they want to do you good, but they care about your influence. And that's what Joe Biden was saying in that initial statement to Xi Jinping. I think that was an accurate one. He was saying, look, as political leaders, even if we're the most tyrannical leader everywhere, we have some concern of a certain percentage of the population, usually the army, the more tyrannical that you get, as you recently seen in some places. There's still actual murders. Wow. Anyway, assassination is still going on. It's pretty crazy. It seems like a throwback to some older time, but you have to realize some other countries are just way worse than the countries that you're probably listening to this from. But you have that situation where different people from different kind of points of view, no matter how despotic you are, there's more of the other people out there. So you have some concerns with what those people are saying and thinking and feeling. So they try to find ways to get people in that kind of standpoint. So here with Joe Biden, he said that. Fact-checking CNN's town hall. This is factcheck.org. Let's see if they actually get into something here where we can get to quickly. Vaccine effectiveness, Delta variant, vaccinations over 50 crowd, shaky jobs comparison, trust in government. Now, I don't know if this is just a list of the different things that were said, or he actually goes into the point out on the particular thing. So getting COVID, you're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you get these vaccinations. As we've explained, these vaccines are not perfect. So Biden can't guarantee that a vaccinated person won't fall ill in COVID-19. Against Delta variant, the vaccines remain remarkably resilient, especially in protecting one against severe disease. But they appear to be a drop off in effectiveness against symptomatic disease, and several studies have emphasized the importance of receiving both doses of the mRNA vaccines. Now, this is something that I think is more of a marketing type of thing, where they're saying, okay, it's the difference with mRNA, and my base knowledge of that is that the Johnson & Johnson is more of a typical older style kind of vaccine, where they get some kind of piece of the actual virus itself, but a low dose of it, and something that they've tried to find a way to negate its infectivity, its infection vectors is completely Buddha-esque, and Buddha is just like a black kind of, but they get a kind of dead. This is whole question: are vaccines alive? I mean, are viruses alive or dead? Do they count as life forms or not? Are they just entities? Are they elements? There's some weird line that vaccines are in there. So they get some form of it, and then your system gets actual lightly infected by it, comes into contact with it, and starts developing ways to actually create some antibodies to that or fight it off. So the next time more of that infection comes in, or whenever smaller amounts of infection comes in, your body's already had a workout, has exercise, has already a plan of how to deal with this particular thing. So the next time it comes in a higher dose, or you find it in the wild, you're used to it. So it's like, oh, you're going to go out in the wild and you might deal with lions and other animals, lions, bears, and tigers, oh my. You might deal with that stuff out there, like somewhere in Kenya. But anyway, so to do that, you can get either a digital version, or you could go to like a zoo and be around, familiarize yourself around a cat, or even just get like a house cat and try to understand certain kind of patterns of stalking patterns of domesticated cat could kind of go into. Okay, I can get it. When the cat kind of goes like this and crouches like this, it's kind of pissed off and might jump on me. You want to test that out on a cat, on a domestic house cat first, before you go out in the wild. Like, oh, look, the lion it's a lion pouncing down, bending down because it's like, it wants me to pet it. No, it's about to jump and eat your face. So I think that's kind of how the older vaccines are. It's kind of test the stuff on something that's less harmful. So when you deal with a bigger harmful one, you're more aware to actually deal with and fight it. So that's a common thing. mRNA is more like a programming. instead of actually dealing with a smaller house cat version of it, it's kind of like doing a full training with a maybe a CGI version of an actual lion, or where your system is being taught, like you're having the stuff drained into your mind because it's teaching that it's the messenger RNA is being taught in your system to make the kind of, in this situation, I think spike proteins or something like that, to actually, it creates, let me not get to the actual details of what it does, the specifics, but it teaches your system how to deal with the actual particular virus it's targeting, particular things it's targeting, without having to partially infect it with either a dead or neutralized version of that thing. So this is a new kind of technology. It's been around for some time, but this is one of the first. I mean, this of course this is one of the biggest rollouts of any kind of therapy, treatment, medical package probably in the existence of humanity. But this is supposedly something that does that in a different way. So I think those are the two differences: the mRNA type of vaccines and whatnot. So anyway, I think that's it for now. And we'd finish this off with the Thomas Sowell 3. Have these up on Redbubble. You can find links to it wherever you actually listen to this. There's all kinds of other merchandise, all kinds of other designs. But Thomas Sowell is an economist in the United States of America. He's one of my favorite economists. Some of the things that he's written. He's one of those people who I kind of got mad that. I got a little pissed, you know, the whole the whole skit from the Chappelle Show, where I think it's a skit where Dave Chappelle and his date or wife or something are at a restaurant, and someone is talking to him about something, and he's like, he's wondering, I wonder where Arsenio Hall is doing. I wonder if he's at a party, and they show Arsenio Hall at some kind of like high class party, and he's walking around, and he's eating this cheese, and he finds that the cheese is so good, and he gets mad that nobody told him. And he's like, Arsenio's like, how come nobody told him the cheese was so good? And I think he starts slapping people. And I think Thomas Sowell is one of those people to me. How come nobody told me the soul was so good? Where I'd had certain observations trying to glean information about certain things and be like, okay, I think this is what I'm seeing in this kind of way. These people approach the world in this way, or this happened due to this and this other way. And I think in part, some of the people that I was listening to also had been influenced by Thomas Sowell. But eventually, once I found Thomas Sowell, and the way he writes is such a succinct kind of way, that is such a clear way, and he puts things in such an understandable way. And maybe, I think I would have understood it even if I heard this back when I was when I was worrying about the prices of PlayStations in Zimbabwe, or PlayStations of Zimbabwe in the United States of America, trying to use that as a primary reason I want to go to one country. I think if I had read Thomas Sowell back then, like The Conflict of Visions, which was already written by that time, I think I would have started to understand a bit about what he was saying, and that might have set my life in a different trajectory. I'm still happy with where I'm at now, recovering from obesity and everything, and having my issues and struggles, but I still have lots of good people around me, and I eventually found Thomas Sowell, so I think it's still okay. But how come nobody told me Sowell was so good? So with Thomas Sowell, he has these 3 questions: compared to what, at what cost, and what solid proof that you have, where he asks about socio-economical issues. Primarily, he states these were questions that he came up with to combat most of the arguments on the political left, especially when it comes to financial economics. But I think they can be taken because economics are everywhere. Economy. So it's like economics. Economy. These are words that people say. So, anyway, I think that economy is about economizing the things that you do. It's about it's about life in general. It's this cost-benefit analysis. Those things go everywhere. See, the cost-benefit analysis when I was a kid was based off of the PlayStation. My parents and the government that was sending them these places had a lot more cost-benefit analyses, and I'm glad whichever cost-benefit analyses came in together decided to send me to the United States of America, because it was in a different world. Well, so that's something that happens in other aspects of life. So I don't think these only apply to economics. I like using them in other parts, and I'll finish it off with this video with applying the question of the actual around taking the vaccination to the Thomas Sowell 3. So compared to what? This is what some people are asking. They're saying, okay, so right now this thing is an experimental thing. Right now, what's the other option? Some people are saying, look, I've actually had COVID. So compared to what? You're telling me to take this. What am I going to gain from taking this emergency use drug? What's going to be the result? What change in my life is it going to actually do? Am I going to now be able to go to certain places that I wasn't before? No, you still have certain limitations. Am I going to not be able to wear a mask? No, you still have to wear a mask in certain places. Am I not going to get it? No, you could still get it. So people are saying, okay, if I've already had it and I have antibodies, a big cohort of those people are just saying, we're not going to do it. Now, if you haven't had it, and then you're in a situation where you're like, okay, there's a simple situation where it's like, look, I'm rather fit. I'm in my 30s. I haven't had any other issues. I'm not around any other old people who are in risk groups. So why should I take this? Like, compared to what? What is the chance? What happens if I actually do get it? Because in most cases, if you actually did end up getting it, in majority of the cases of the people who have been infected, don't even get symptoms. Now, if you do get symptoms, are there ways to actually treat it and address it? And yes, there's ways to find those things early. There have been certain therapies. There have been certain steps to be taken. There's certain risk factors. If I just decide to walk around in my mask, do masks work? Now, that's a question. If masks work, should the person who hasn't had it just wear the mask? And this is quite the questions that go on there. So people are saying, compared to what? And so people get to that level and they say, okay, compared to that, the options of me actually getting it in the wild, I'm going to take those risks. And that's what people do. At what cost? Now, at what cost is the risk of the actual things coming up? There have been some reports of some people having certain reactions to the actual vaccine and things like this. Those are questions that some people have. Now, that is a question. If you've had it already and you've recovered from it, people might say, look, I don't want to go through this already because it might happen again. I'm just going to trust whatever antibodies I have. If you haven't, you're saying, I'm going to directly expose myself to this thing that could actually have some certain costs. Now, is the percentage of me getting one of these side effects less than me actually getting ill if I do get infected in the wild? I don't know what the actual figures of those things are. Maybe the people done the cost-benefit analysis on that and said, okay, we're not going to do it. But there definitely is a question when it comes to something like specifically people who are saying, if something does happen to me from taking this, what is the actual cost? Can I go and sue the company? I know there's some protections of indemnity against the big companies that are giving this emergency use authorization in the United States of America against class action lawsuits. Now, I think if it is approved for general use, the indemnity from the class action lawsuits, I think that drops at that point. Now, there's just been a recent thing that came up with some of the opioid producing companies in the United States of America have had class action lawsuit come out and they're paying out like hundreds of, like I think tens of billions, it might be tens of billions of dollars are being paid out to all the people who have been affected, many of the people who have been affected who are subject to that class action lawsuit. Now, something like that could happen. And maybe I'm sure that if and when that time comes, if you've been vaccinated under the emergency use authorization, you can't go and get any kind of legal recourse in the justice system, the way it's written out. But if it's after, that might be a possibility. So some people could just be waiting for that. Hey, if there's a cost, I want to be able to actually recoup it somehow. That could be a thing. There could be something like that. And at what cost could also be a simple thing. In the United States of America, they've done a pretty good job at subsidizing this because, yes, I think it's about $10 per shot for the Johnson & Johnson. This is the cost that's being billed to the government. And it's about 20 to 30 for the other ones, for the Moderna and the Pfizer BioNTech ones. And these are things that are already paid for through the government printing money or indebting people through the taxation. So those are things that are paid for, quote unquote, paid for already by the people, by their government. So it's out there. And I don't think there's too many people in the United States of America. I don't think there's people who are charging to actually take it. It's just getting to the location where they're being given and you take it. In other countries, there is a cost, but we're talking about mostly in the United States of America here. So I think the actual monetarily cost for it, and there are certain things where there might be some reactions to the actual thing when you actually take it. Some people have had adverse reactions as their body's adjusting to this substance that has been installed into them, and their body's getting better. There might be a dip, and some people are like, "Oh, I have to be at work. I have to be doing this. I can't risk having a chance for 2 weeks or a week or however amount of time I'm out of sorts and I can't deal with certain things." So some people might say, might just be passing it on, pushing it on until they're in a better kind of situation. And another one here is, what solid proof do you have? This is a simple thing. What solid proof do people have that there are no issues with this? Again, they might have listed those things on that White House website. If there is solid proof that this thing is okay, then how come they haven't just decided to have it be approved? Why is it still the emergency use? And that is a big question. If it was completely a situation where they understood that there's actually no more risks with it in the situation, they would have passed it. And this is the thing, they might just be a simple system where in order to claim they have solid proof for it, they need to get to the point where they need maybe a couple of months to do the full test, to see a full cycle of how this actually affects a certain organism in this certain amount of time. There could be a few things, the checks and balances in that system that's set up, that they're just waiting before they say they have solid proof. But as I mentioned with that class action lawsuit with the opioids, what solid proof was it when the experts had been giving people, had been telling people, the FDA had approved these opioids. The FDA had approved the system that was leading to these opioids getting into this opioid crisis, to get doctors and other practitioners to keep prescribing these things to patients. So that was under the FDA. That wasn't opioids in that kind of sense. We're not emergency use. So that is after it's gone through the system. So what solid proof does the FDA have that the FDA is actually the best kind of system in order to do this? What solid proof do we have in those kind of situations? Those are the kind of questions that I think people have. Now, that's it for now. This is a lot longer video than I thought it will. I'm going to go to the start of this. After I'm done recording this and editing this, I shall mention at the start how long this actually took, because this is a lot longer than I thought it was going to take. But thank you all for listening. There'll be more content coming up. Doing most of the content I've been doing right now is more conversational type of things, and I'm going into more actually creating small animations, and I'm going to get into the future of creating games, and I have some big things coming. If you've been following this channel for some time, thank you very much for that. Following me on different portals, different locations. There's links. I created one link page where you can find my socials, merchandise, support, and all these kind of things, and I'll just be adding different things to that one central link location as different things develop. But those projects that I had in mind are coming up, so a lot of exciting things in my estimation coming up. Maybe you'll find it exciting as well. Let me know what you think about this. Have you gotten the vaccine? Are you planning on it? I personally haven't gotten it yet. I don't really move around too much. I just have a rather sedentary lifestyle, rather hermit lifestyle. I go on my daily walks and things like this. But it seems like if it gets to the point where I need to travel, that might be in a couple of months. At that point, I'll probably take it if it's a thing where it's like you have to take it to actually travel. Get more information about that, look around, talk to people, find actual experts, and go with these three, compare it to what, at what cost, what solid proof do you have? These are three questions you can ask any expert about this kind of this kind of thing, about why you should take it, why you should take the particular one that you take, why you shouldn't take it, why you'd rather do the testing type of thing. I just saw this recent thing that George Soros and Bill Gates recently purchased a company that's involved with testing in Europe, and that's going to be another major thing. There might be a simple thing. It's like, hey, we're going to test people. There's going to be a new kind of system where before you travel, you're going to be tested not just for this, but there's going to be other things coming in the future where they need to test and see this. Because certain places have certain vaccines, certain other places, those vaccines are not allowed to be taken. Some places have taken just Sinovac, some places have taken just AstraZeneca. Like there was this thing in New York City where there was like a concert, and I think it was like Foo Fighters concert or something, and they said if you've taken an AstraZeneca one and none of the ones approved for emergency use in the United States of America, you can't actually enter the concert. These are things that different people are going to be doing. So testing is going to be a key part of this, not even just if you've had it, because even if you've taken the vaccine, as we've seen, you could still be infected. You could still actually get the virus. So they could be still testing. So even if you have taken the vaccine, I think testing will be a common thing. So I might just say the testing is okay for me. These are things that dependent. I'm going to do this cost-benefit analysis at those times when it comes. Thank you all for listening. Till next time, goodbye.